Well, I couldn't be more excited today. I've got a guest with me, Jaime Masters. She is the podcast host with Eventual Millionaire. And Jaime, I'll just have to say the majority of our audience already knows who you are without a question. But I want to start this with saying thank you, because 7 years ago when we just started, you gave me an opportunity to be on Eventual Millionaire. And I was so nervous. I remember it like it was yesterday. I had notes taped up everywhere and I didn't want to say the wrong thing. And you had all these guests that were amazing, and I read the list of guests, and the more I read, the more nervous I got, and I was like, oh my gosh. And this lady's given me a chance to be on her show. Since then, I've been a guest a couple of times of yours on Eventual Millionaire, and you've made me feel so welcome. And I just really enjoy being with you. But for those, if there is a person that don't know who you are and a little bit about your podcast, please tell us a little bit more about you and your background and a little bit about your podcast.
Perfect. Now, it was amazing to have you as a guest, and your kind heart showed through. And that's what I try and do. I've been interviewing almost 500 millionaires in business. And so you can check that out for over 9 years. But ideally, people that care about their life first and then money. So yes, money's wonderful and amazing. And that's why I love guests like you that can really share what it's really like in the trenches, because there are trenches sometimes, right? It feels crazy. And so to be able to get that data also from over 500 on what the best of the best really do and how they navigate the waters of business ownership, it was a pleasure to have you and many, many, many other people that are willing to share their quote unquote secrets, right? It's not secret. It's just pain in the butt sometimes. So navigating what those waters look like and allowing people to see how people get through that, I think is hugely important when it feels so alone in business. As you know, that's why you run mastermind groups.
Right. You know, you've got a really interesting story yourself, dating back to when you were a child. You were very aggressive and you were an overachiever and you wanted to do better. So you took all these advanced classes in school and you just did everything to the max. And then you graduated and you started this life and you were traveling around, jet setting all over the world. Tell us a little bit more about that. So one day this realization came. It's like, hey, I'm making a little bit of money. You've amassed a certain amount of debt. And you woke up one day and you said, hey, my life really is not what I had prescribed, because I know that you had wished differently for your parents. Even a story you tell about wishing on a star one day, you were like, man, I wish my mom and my dad could really enjoy their life like I want to enjoy it. And you made a real concerted effort to change that. Kind of take us to that moment just for a moment.
Oh, yes. And you made it sound, the jet setting sounded super fun. It was definitely not. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people do, that we get set up for this future. My parents didn't have a lot of money. My mom's a secretary, and my dad's always hated his job pretty much. And so when I looked at my future, I was like, I'm not going to be them. I'm going to have enough money so that way I don't have to feel unsafe. Because when I was younger, buying shoes was difficult. And I was like, I really wanted to not shop at Goodwill every single time. Don't get me wrong, love Goodwill. And being able to
You just wanted to be able to shop somewhere else,
Exactly. Please, choices would be a wonderful thing. So since I was young, I was really going after that. And I really went after the money first, unfortunately. Lessons learned, because when I was 8, I was like, I'm going to be a millionaire. But unfortunately, because I made these decisions about money first and not life, I got in a 6-figure job when I was 22. Again, that sounds amazing. Jet setting all around the world. I gained 30 or 40 pounds. I was miserable. I hated. I was good at what I did, but I was a project manager for a video on demand company. When I'm a visionary, I hate details. So funny to put myself in a box of what my strengths are not every single day, and having all these deadlines where I hate deadlines, and knowing who I am now, it's so funny in hindsight to go back and be like, what was I doing to myself, right? But I was in so much debt, $70,000 in debt, because I was trying to live this life that my parents didn't have. I mean, my parents had an okay house, don't get me wrong, but I bought my first house at 19. I graduated early. I did all these things to try and look on the surface absolutely amazing, and then was so empty, and felt like I was caught in a loop of, well, I can't get out of my job because we have so much debt, and I can't make choices. Now I'm stuck in a life path that I hate. And that was 24 by the time I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I quit the 6-figure job with nothing, by the way. I mean, I had paid off the $70,000 in debt, but it was unknown and crazy for a really long period of time. Again, knowing that I needed to change something and that the money wasn't worth my life.
So you started Eventual Millionaire, and as a result of that, you've met a lot of really cool people. No question about it. You know, one of the advantages of doing podcasts is it gives you that ability to meet really cool people. And you discovered throughout this process masterminds, and that's what we want to talk about just a little bit
Yes.
today. Tell us how you got involved in your first mastermind and why did you get involved in it?
Well, it's funny. I had a mentor in Maine that was a business coach that sort of taught me everything I knew, and he ran masterminds. And so, what was really cool is, you know, that quote, you're the average of the five people.
Right.
So, I literally made a list of the five people. I'm from a small town in Maine. There didn't have very many friends, definitely not really like online business friends in any way, shape, or form. So, I made that list of a bunch of people from like high school and college who all hated their lives. I mean, they were wonderful people,
Sure.
but they didn't like what they were doing either. And so, when I made that list, I was like, huh, that sucks. And again, if you ever make this list, make sure you burn it. Like it's not, it's not fun to be like, oh, all my friends kind of aren't great.
Right.
But that really was the catalyst many, many years ago. My mastermind group's been running for 10 years. My first session with the mastermind was when my blog was 1 month old, just as a side note, which is kind of interesting. Who would want somebody who just started online? But I had a lot of accolades beforehand that I tried to lean on. So what I ended up doing was trying to make a list of five people that I actually knew that were successful. And I made a list of one. And I was like, well, there goes that. So, so I started reaching out to random people online. I went
Right.
on forums. I was just trying to find something because there was a great book, Think and Grow Rich, of course. And
Right.
since since my mentor had run masterminds before, I sort of knew some of the formats, and I was sort of under his wing to learn what would work. And yeah, I just ended up starting my own. And so, like, I think you might know the story. The funny story is I randomly emailed a whole bunch of people cold. One of them was Pat Flynn, who is super cool now. It was quite cool back then. I think his email list was 10,000
He
or
wasn't as
so.
cool as he is now, but he
Right?
was pretty cool. Right.
He was 10,000 people on his email list. Cool. So, but he said no at first too. I don't know if you heard that story. So, so when we're looking through the list, I didn't have any friends. So anybody can have a mastermind group and start it and know that, you know, it's going to take a little bit of time and effort to really build out your network, especially, I mean, looking back 10 years, my network is insane, like you were saying. But it all started with a catalyst of the mastermind group.
You know what's pretty cool is you said something I think is really important is that you had a few accolades, but you were creating a framework by which people could come together, and it wasn't necessary for Jaime Masters to have all the answers, right? You had the framework and you were inviting the guests to your mastermind, but the benefit is in the group. It's not just a dialogue from you to them. It's not just a dissertation. It's more of the interaction. And I heard you say that a lot of people are fearful of starting masterminds today because they're afraid they don't have the answer. Would you speak to that just for a moment and what
Nobody
benefits?
has the answers. Sorry.
Not all of them, right?
Yes. I mean, I think we need to lean on that a little bit too. When I was looking for people, I was looking for people 2 steps ahead of me because I wanted somebody to tell me what to do-ish, or I have a
Right,
handful of people that have done it
right,
before. I mean, the good news is the accolades that I did have, I worked for one of my friends who doing project management that was a huge YouTube sensation. So I definitely leaned on, we have 50 million views. And I know
right.
I did a lot of data research. So that was the piece that I could lean on at least a little
Sure,
bit to try and get somebody that was, again, 2 steps ahead of you is tough. But like I said, Pat said no. And he
right.
said the only reason why he ended up saying yes was because I had a very structured format, especially
Mm.
because a lot of people have created mastermind groups before. And they sort of wither away, or
Kind
the
of
energy
loosey
sort of,
goosey, right? There's
yeah,
no framework, right?
yes. And they
Right,
just sort of like people will go and be like, I don't know if it's worth the time and energy. And I'm militant a little when it comes to this stuff. I was like, nope, if you miss 2 sessions, we kick you out. Like
right.
it was a very
Sure,
structured piece. So he said no at first. And then I emailed him again when we had all the rest of the group. So we leaned on the rest of the group of people that ended up saying yes, who were amazing people. I don't know why they said
right.
yes to begin with. I was trying to like go, if I can get one really good person, then
Sure,
I can get another person to say yes, because it is the power of the group and
right.
the assets that each person in that group has, even if it's not huge accolades. If they know something about something, one of the very, very beginning people was a stage hypnotist and did mind reading and
Mm.
performing. Like that's, an interesting subset, right? And another person ran a company that was a virtual assistant company. And so able to bring to those people together with different skill sets, Pat ended up saying yes. And so, yeah, thank goodness it wasn't just on me. Being able to really bring a group together of high-level thinkers to not be alone was huge.
Well, industry-specific masterminds exist, but there's great value in the diversity of the group because they bring a different perspective. How difficult was it for you in the beginning? Because if you were like me, a higher achiever, you're like, I know a lot of the answers, but to listen to others' perspectives as a solution possibly for you, how did you adopt that mindset of I'm going to go with it or not? Was that a challenge for you listening to other perspectives?
Well, I'm very opinionated. So, what it took for me was trusting where the information was coming from. So the people in my mastermind, it's easy to trust their point of view. When I started interviewing millionaires, I was like, oh, I trust their point of view. They started giving me tons of advice. And what I learned is that I shouldn't be like a squirrel chasing random advice everywhere. I really need to figure out who I trust,
right.
And know that they know me. The point of masterminds to me, which are really, really helpful, is that they know you so well. Like my people, 10 years this mastermind is going. Not everyone's been in for 10, one's 7, as we figure it out. But they know me so ridiculously well. They know my patterns. They know everything. And so because they know me so well, now it's super easy to take their advice. Beforehand, they were all better than me. So of course I trusted quite a bit more of what they said. But being open is something that's huge. I've been a coach for, 11, 12 years now. And being open is one of the biggest things you can do to grow as an entrepreneur. And when you see somebody closed off, it's like, if you were just a little more open and to test a few more things instead of being, in our own world. It's been huge. I think
you said something really important we need to spend a moment on. You said, these people know me well. And we see people every day. You and I both know a lot of common acquaintances, and they get in and out of these masterminds. And it's really not for the masterminding, it's for the networking. They just want to get near somebody, but they don't ever really fully get the value of masterminds for the short period of time that they're in, because there's not a blanket answer for everybody. And Jaime does things one way. You have a history, the way you were raised, the businesses that you've done in the past, your children, your husband. All these things play a part in the equation that people help you with and getting in and out of these masterminds. I applaud you for having this group for a decade. I was in the Eagles group with Dave Ramsey and Dan Miller and those guys for 10 or 12 years as well. And they helped me make decisions because they knew me intimately. And so I think that's a really valuable point that you bring out there. How do you do with the shiny object syndrome, and how has masterminds enhanced your ability to maybe focus at a higher level?
Well, we do yearly goals. So we have to each year go back through the previous year's goals and go, did we do what we say? So that accountability alone is a wonderful thing to be like, crap, I didn't do some of the things I said I was going to do, right? But also for me internally, my right hand in business manages up really well. So for the accountability side, we don't use the accountability side too much in the mastermind group. It's more or less when we show up, because it's a weekly group, we show up every week and we talk about our wins. Right. We really try and go, this is what we're moving forward. And they're really great at calling us out if we're not. Like, didn't you say you were going to do that? Yeah, I haven't heard about that in a little while. Where'd that go? Right. And like I was saying before, when they call you out on the stuff that they know you so well on, it's a little like, yep, totally. And I love the gift of calling people out. I like it probably a little too much, but I love the gift of calling
I'm with you.
people
I love it. That's like, I got a sticky note here that said,
exactly.
2 months ago, you were going to do this.
Exactly. That's exactly what I do too, right? It's awesome to have a coach in your restaurant group where you're like, wait a minute, that doesn't line up. And we can hold all of us accountable in terms of that stuff, because I have ADD, literally been diagnosed. So yes, it is a difficult thing to try and go through, but I do know that is the more I focus and the more I put my energy down one track, the faster it goes and the more momentum I get and the better I feel anyway. So I love it when people can call me out on me going in random directions.
Jaime, can you think of 1 or 2 particular benefits of being in the group that specifically comes to mind, some level of success you've had that you can directly tie to another member of your group?
I mean, I was on Pat Flynn's podcast and that went crazy. So, I mean, there's number one, just
With
having
50 plus million downloads now, I'll add. So
Isn't that insane?
that's a pretty big show. All right.
Yeah, and when and we did it a handful of times. I was able to write on his blog a few times. You know what I mean? Like, let alone those tangible things. There's a ton of intangible stuff too, of just having the connections, getting introductions. Sure. We care about each other as humans, and so to be able to have that, I think, is really, really huge. They gave me the idea for starting my podcast. I didn't have a podcast when I started with them, so it's been huge.
You know, when you first get into the group, if you were like I was, is that it's difficult to become vulnerable, and we have to be transparent. People want us to be authentic. How difficult was it for you to be vulnerable, and how long did it take you to get to that level?
A while. Yeah. So I'm not a wear your heart on your sleeve type of person. We take action and we do all the things. And so, especially at the very beginning, when I really didn't have much of a business, right? And I was with all these people who were doing amazing things. I was like, yeah, my wins are, so I got a lot of press. It's funny because in your background, a lot of that press came from when I was like, I don't know what else to do, but a win would be getting press. So I randomly went and got as much press as I could just to have some sort of win so I could sort of prove myself, right? Because opening up and feeling comfortable and having the space held is different. So for me, what the biggest thing was meeting in person, to be able to have inside jokes, to be able to really get to know them as a human. I know I run masterminds too, and we have retreats. When we can have the retreats where they can actually open up and be vulnerable and hang out, because it's hard to build just a connection online and know that, like, who they are as a person in an hour a week. So when you can actually be there, my mastermind meets at least yearly, to be able to connect and be like, oh yeah, we're friends too. We can catch up in so many other ways, and that has allowed me to be way more vulnerable. At the last retreat, I mean, I cried my face off in front of them. Totally cool, right? And to be able to open up like that is so important, because we don't have, I mean, speaking as a business owner, most business owners don't have somebody that they can actually let it out to. And because I coach so many high-level entrepreneurs, I tell them, like, let's not talk to your husband or wife about the craziness specifically, because that can create volatility in a relationship also, because you know what entrepreneurship is like, especially if their spouse is not an entrepreneur. Right? Our riskiness is a little interesting when it comes to that, but having peers that you can share this with is invaluable, where you can actually open up and share your fears, because as you all well know, they are so common, it's ridiculous. Like, everybody has stuff like this, and it's awesome to be able to know that you're not alone.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how many zeros in your bank account. There's still these situations that we have to deal with, and we have to have trusted advisors that are non-biased, that can surround us and give us the truth and point the things out that we need to hear. Okay, let's just say today you have a new idea. How nervous are you now versus then to share new ideas that you have about your personal life or professionally?
Oh yeah, no, it's, I mean, 0 to 100, right? So back in the day, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Do they like it? Blah, 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 right? And it was me really seeking validation as much as humanly possible. Now, especially 10 years in, we're like, okay, this is what I'm doing. And they're like, oh yeah, you should tweak it like this. You could do this. I mean, that's what's so amazing, to sort of see the different conversations that we're having from years back. Not that we don't have, trepidation and stuff like that, but it's a completely different ball game from when I was brand new, for sure.
You know, I remember a time when I went into the Eagles with an idea, and you and I shared Dan Miller as a mutual friend, and Dan is so diplomatic, and he said, well, would you consider maybe this? And he gave me 2 or 3 options. And then Dave Ramsey looked at me and he goes, that's the stupidest idea I've ever heard in my entire life. So they say the same thing, right? But they say it from a different perspective. But that's what makes the group so amazing, is having people that you can share your new ideas and they can be totally candid and honest with you. Some of the people that come to our groups that don't really know us initially, there's a little bit of trepidation about, what if I share an idea and somebody takes it? Did you ever have that fear in your groups? And if so, what did you do? And if not, how did you overcome that fear?
I haven't. So to me, we have a lot of similar things in our mastermind group, which is totally fine. But I see it as co-opetition, not competition, at least for most of the, I mean, the people that are in my group care about me. So I haven't had any issues sharing what I need to share. And I'm hoping, and one of my biggest things is communication, right? So being able to communicate truthfully in a way that gets all sides heard, I think is hugely important. So even when you were saying beforehand, if somebody's too candid for me, I can go, that was a little rough. Not
Right.
during the call, we
Right.
usually chat afterwards. That was a little rough for me, just so you know. I just wanted to give you some feedback on your constructive criticism and how
Right.
I like to receive it, right?
Right.
And so while I haven't had that specific fear, or I mean, I'm very open. I will tell lots of people lots of things. I'm not the type of person to have anyone sign an NDA beforehand. It's like, I know how much work goes into putting in effort on a business
Right.
idea.
Right.
I would hope that they would come to me and we could chat about it. But like I said, it's the open and honest communication that really makes a difference in all the world.
You know, Gay Hendricks wrote in his book about upper limit challenges. And we all have upper limit challenges. If you don't mind me asking, what are some upper limit challenges that you've personally experienced?
I love Gay Hendricks. I've read his book. I don't know how many times I've interviewed him on
The
my
Big
show
Leap.
also.
That's a great
Yes.
book.
Highly recommended to so many
Yeah.
people, and the words that he put around the upper limit problem, like, yes, right? So mine are, I go into martyrdom. I'm a single mom of 2 kids, right? So anybody that gives me an idea in my mastermind or something, I'm like, I don't know if I have enough time, space, energy. Like, it always goes back to that. So I get to play small because I have so many things on my plate, right? And so the mastermind group is really great at calling me out on, okay, well then get more support. Like, you have the power, please get some more support, and figuring out those things instead of me living in this victim story of martyrdom, right? Like, I've come a long way, don't get me wrong, but it still pops up. And usually I'm pretty unaware of it, like where I go back into old patterns. And so they're really good about being like, and sometimes it's harsh, right? That's why sometimes I have to be like, that was a little harsh. Like I told you before, my former husband has stage 4 cancer, and I'm like, I need a little more tenderness right now.
Right.
Not, you know,
Right.
and to
Another
be able
reason
to,
that people need to know you well, because see, if
Yeah.
somebody's in and out, they wouldn't realize that you were having this crisis in your family right now. They may say something that's very inappropriate because they don't know your experience that you're going through presently. And there again, another reason long-term pays big dividends.
A million times, yes. And when you can share that, and I mean, that's super vulnerable for me. I was like, I don't want to use that as an excuse for not achieving my goals either, because that sucks, right? But to be able to have it shared and just have people be a little bit more tender, like I said, to not be like, it's all about the money, because it's not. It's not to me this year. You know, this year's a totally different kind of year. And for them to know that about me, and they've reached out for support and like, what else do you need? How can we help? Like, it just feels so amazing to have support from people that really, really know you well.
Do you find it's easier for you to give advice or to receive it?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm so used to, I give advice all day long.
Oh, so
I'm a
you're
business
used to
coach.
that, right?
Yeah, I am to the nth degree. All I do is give advice. But what I love about my mastermind is that it's not the Jaime show. I
Right.
probably speak a lot less than others because I know that each person has their own skill set and their own wisdom. And so to be able to step back, I'm at least trying to do a good job of not taking over things because sometimes I do, right? And so trying to figure out where that line is of over giving advice, right? Like, I don't really need to share everything because everybody's got their things. And it's been a give and play for, 10 years. Sometimes I am a little bit more and sometimes I'm not. Especially now when I'm going through stuff, I'm like, you know what? They got this. They don't need my craziness and telling them exactly what to do. I just have so much data and so much history on business advice from a million different businesses that it's hard not to share. But I am a lot less easy to receive because of the patterns that I have, and I've been working on this for the past 5 years of being open to receiving advice better and not being like, I've tried that before, or, no, I haven't done this, or you know what I mean? There's those kind of things. So that's definitely what I'm working on.
I think another key that you said is the way they deliver the information. And I think it's important that we do maybe a disc profile or we do studies on people and learn how we can speak to certain people where they will receive it in a great fashion. We talk a lot in our mastermind groups about accountability. And I think it's really important. What is the level of importance in the groups that you've participated in, and how do you see accountability useful to you?
So at the beginning, accountability was huge. So the format that we have was all about wins, and then it was about like the hot seat. And then at the end, I was like, and then we say what we're going to do. what would the most, I have a thing where I, in my book called active actions versus passive actions. Active actions are the ones that scare you a little bit and align with your goal. So the ones that we avoid typically. And at the beginning, I needed that more than anyone. Now we don't do that anymore. We have teams, like the teams, keep us very, very accountable. So that way we don't have to be like, did you do the thing you said you were going to do? And so we now only mostly have to do updates versus, did you do the thing you said you were going to do? Now, depending on the mastermind, because I run masterminds too, depending on the mastermind and the people that are in it, if they feel like they need accountability, adding that piece in is huge. It's huge to be like, as simple of a question as, did you do the thing that you said you were going to do last week? Again, not rocket science, but game changer. Right. And what we do. So thankfully, I've built up the team that keeps me accountable because I have ADD, right? But being able to have that in the mastermind, have the yearly goals, that's what we really lean on right now.
Well, it's easy in masterminds to be the encourager, to be the person that edifies. But quite honestly, people get a little bit nervous about pointing out blind spots, right? Mm-hmm. That's the part where it gets a little bit dicey. If you don't mind, share with us maybe a blind spot that has been pointed out to you about yourself in the mastermind.
So what we do, we have a little format for this because, yes, I feel you on exactly what you're saying. And we have a talk behind your back day. So it's fun, fun in a very boundary pushing way typically. So what we do is everybody else hops on the call and you don't, and we just talk about you behind your back. In a loving way. Sure, don't get me wrong. Sure. You're not going to be mean. Right. Yes. But normally if I'm on the call, I'll be like, yeah, but
you defend it.
Yes, right. I know, but right. And so when I'm not on the call, they record the call, and I'm not drinking now, but I used to be like, I'll have a glass of wine and then I listen to the call because, because it can be heavy. They, like I said before, they really talk about she could do so much more. She's playing smaller than she could, like those types of things. But also they talk about, my emotional subset of being like, oh, but she needs to be doing this and that and the other thing. And they come up with new ideas on how I should be in the world. It's really cool to hear their perspective of me. Right. And how, especially even the strength sides, not just the blind spots on the strength sides, because I am really good at connection and it comes so easily for me. I kind of disregard it. Right. And so a lot of the calls are like, she doesn't understand what she has. How come? Right? And it's really eye-opening to have people that love you and care about you talk about you behind your back. So I highly recommend it to people that only the people that love you, not the people that don't.
The benefit of talking about somebody behind their back is they get the ability to listen and watch, and otherwise, it wouldn't be beneficial, but because you do have the ability to listen in later from a constructive point, I can really understand that. Masterminds cost money, and a lot of people push back on that. They're like, I don't know if I'm going to get the value out of that. Do you think it's personally worth the investment that people pay to be in these groups?
I'm very opinionated about this too. So, and I charge for my masterminds, but we let them, once I set them up, we let them be free. So personally, I don't pay for my 10-year mastermind. I set that up on my own. I don't think people should pay forever for a mastermind, but it's totally worth the investment on the short-term side. I mean, I wouldn't have started my podcast. One of the things that was huge for me is I came to my mastermind group and this was year one-ish. I was like, I can't do all this writing. I know I committed to all this writing. I hate writing. Like it was a whole thing. And the mastermind goes, well, why don't you start a podcast? They're like, you should interview millionaires. And I was like, that's a great idea. I know 0 millionaires, right? Wow. So, I mean, if I didn't have the mastermind then, I wouldn't have the podcast and have a network of almost 500 millionaires because of it. So they're invaluable, especially you get what you put into it. Just as a side note, I run them too, right? If somebody's like pulling back, that's on them. They're pulling back because they don't think they're going to get the value out of it. You have to go all in, really be open, like you're saying, and you can get massive amounts of value, but even in a short time, it doesn't matter. Yes, the long term is really absolutely amazing. But short term, you can get so much out of it too, not just the networking.
I remember multiple times in that 12-year period in the Eagles thinking it's 45-minute drive. I'm going to talk for an hour and a half, 45-minute drive back. I'm burning up 3 or 4 hours of my day. And I did that every Wednesday for 12 years. And many times, Jamie, I remember thinking it's just not worth it. Right. And I'd go months sometimes and go, I love these guys and it's fun. But then somebody would say something and I would go, what did you just say? And they would repeat it. And I was like, that's the answer. That's what I needed. It made the whole 12 years worth it right there. That one thing changed the dynamics of my business or my personal life. They gave you something that you needed. But for me personally, things may be going well, but there's going to be times where we have valleys and we're going to need those people around us to help us, to encourage us, because if we're not spending time with people when things are good, they certainly are not going to be there when times are bad. Last question today I want to ask you, can you think, and you just gave us a huge breakthrough that you had as a result of starting Eventual Millionaire, as a result of your mastermind. Can you think of another quick story where you had a major breakthrough as a result of being in your group, either personally or professionally?
Well, I'll give you a recent one from my goals from this year. One of the things that I absolutely love doing is retreats. So we do implementation retreats. And the guys in my group are like, why don't you do that a lot more? And I'm like, well, it takes a lot of energy, right? It was my whole thing. And they're like, but if you did it like this, and they laid out a whole thing on what I should be doing to create more of these, because I love them. Like that is, I love connecting with people personally. I love seeing people get things done. We say in 2.5 days, they can get done 2.5 months would take if you're on your own, right? To see that change just lights me up. They're like, why are you not doing a lot more of those, recording that? Like there's so many pieces that you're missing the gap on for this. And I was like, okay, yeah, it was my story of like, well, I can only do 2 or 3 a year. Like it's so much energy. And then I'm like, I did one last week and a half ago. I set the intention to do it and try and get as much energy as I could after the event, because I'm an introvert. So when I expend energy, so we're reformatting the way that we're doing it also to make it, I'm just lit up and so excited over something like this. So even in the dealing with the emotional stuff, right, with the former husband, like I still feel like I can go and do more of these because it really lights me up. And they were able to go, did you not see that piece? And I didn't. I was so stuck in my, I can't do too much right now. Let's not put any more on my plate. And I'm going to have so much more joy and help so many more people because of that, instead of being like, oh, I can't put very much on my plate this year. This is an even kind of year because of that. And so I'm just grateful that they can slap me a little bit and remember who I am, and the joy that I want to have in the world is extremely important.
Yeah, when we're too close to it, we can't see it sometimes. And your group was able to do that. Jamie, tell us a little bit more about your book, and then also tell us a little bit more how our audience could subscribe to Eventual Millionaire and how they can best connect with you.
Perfect. So my book is all about how I quit my 6-figure job, paid off 70 grand in debt. And then I researched from all the millionaires what they did to start their business. So if you're in the beginning stages or you're trying to transition from one business to another, it's really cool to see all the data of all the millionaires, because I interviewed them all, but I also surveyed them. So there's a lot of data. I have a degree in computers, so I'm a super geek when it comes to some of that stuff. So you can pick up the book on Amazon easily. You can also check out my podcast anywhere podcast is. It's called Eventual Millionaire. I highly recommend going that way. But we also have anything that I mentioned here, which I didn't mention too many things, but I'm going to add the speed of implementation, which is something that I love giving. It's actually a Google Doc, not an opt-in, people, just so you know. Cool. If you go to eventualmillionaire.com/view from the top, you'll have that and a couple other things on that list that I can give away for free. So that way we can help, because I've just seen so many business owners go through so much, and being able to create that speed of implementation, especially with like our retreats, making that time collapse will make your mastermind group so much more fruitful. So please go ahead and check that out.
Jamie, it's been a pleasure today. Thank you for spending some time with us here. And we certainly wish you the best. Good luck on your book, and can't wait to contact you again. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Aaron. You are the best.
We'll see you.